Luffy's fist was no longer moving. His body lay collapsed on the floor of the mythical Vegapunk, and Imu's black scythe was descending toward him. 3 seconds. 3 seconds was all the straw-hatted boy had left before being erased from the memory of the entire world. But then the sky of Elbaf filled with red feathers, and the scythe stopped in midair, and a man landed, and everything changed. It was Akagami no Shanks, the red-haired Yonko, the man who saw this day coming 10 years ago, and who arrived ready to die. What happened next was the most brutal fight the New World had ever seen. 2 legendary devil fruits, a sword with a soul of its own. And by the end of this story, the red eyes on Imu's crown would go out one by one. But first, we had to see how it began. 3 minutes earlier, Luffy was arriving at the Vegapunk, confident, with Gear 5 activated, convinced that tonight he would finally defeat the true king of the world. Imu waited for him seated on a throne of shadows, with white hair falling, with red horns glowing, with a single word prepared. The ancient word left the demon's lips. He touched Luffy's forehead with 2 cold fingers, and the fruit of Nika went completely dark. Luffy fell. Gear 5 vanished. The straw hat split in 2 as it struck the metal floor of the ancient Vegapunk from the Void Century. Imu rose. He walked toward him without hurry, with his red tail swaying behind him, with the crown of smoke and red eyes following him in the air. The Scythe of Oblivion appeared in his hands, black, stepped, with a curved white blade that sang alone with the voices of every victim erased from the world. Behind Imu floated a crown of black smoke with living red eyes, watching the whole world without blinking, all focused on the dying Luffy. Imu aimed the scythe at Luffy's chest. He whispered another word. The blade gleamed. He was going to erase him. He was going to make the world forget him forever. And then the first red feather fell from the sky, soft, glowing like ancient embers, and it landed on the broken hat of the dying boy on the floor. Imu halted the strike. His amber eye lifted toward the horizon, and for the first time in 800 years, the demon of the sea recognized something terrible coming. A second feather fell, and a third. Soon the sky was full of red feathers floating down, falling slowly, like a rain no cloud had announced. On the horizon, a silhouette appeared, red hair in the wind, a cloak, a single hand, and a golden sword glowing with an aura that split the air. Imu whispered a name in a tongue so ancient that not even the poneglyphs preserved its writing anymore. He said it softly, almost in fear, almost in respect. Akagami, said the demon, and the red eyes of his crown all contracted at once, focusing on the man who was approaching, flying fast. The silhouette crossed the air at impossible speed. It split clouds. It folded winds. It left a golden trail that blended with the sunrise over Elbaf. Imu accelerated the scythe's motion. The white blade aimed at Luffy's chest. The intent was clear. Erase him before the visitor arrived. But then the time of Elbaf did something it had never done in 800 years. The scythe stopped, suspended in the air, motionless, trapped, as if the air itself had decided to hold it, as if an invisible hand had frozen it, as if the next second had momentarily ceased to exist. Imu opened his amber eye wide. For the first time in 8 centuries, something had dared to interrupt his will without permission, and the demon did not understand how. On the cracked floor of the Vegapunk, beside Luffy, Akagami no Shanks landed softly, with his single hand extended toward the scythe suspended in the air. His fingers glowed gold, an ancient power, a unique power, the power of his devil fruit, the fruit of time. The Mirai Mirai no Mi awakened, but there was something more, something glowing in his sword, resting on his shoulder, something vibrating inside the blade, something that was about to awaken too, because Shanks did not have one devil fruit. Shanks had 2, and that night, in Elbaf, he was going to reveal both for the first time in 30 years. Akagami no Shanks looked at Imu the way one looks at an old unexpected acquaintance. He took a deep breath and whispered the 3 words he had been choking back for 10 years. But to understand how Akagami no Shanks reached that sky over Elbaf, we have to go back 3 days, to a cold morning in the New World. The red-haired pirate's ship cut through the waves in silence, with its red sails swollen by a wind only Shanks seemed to truly hear. Beckman stood by the helm, with his rifle on his shoulder, the cigarette gone out between his lips, watching his captain the way only a friend watches. Shanks gazed at the horizon with a cup of sake in his single hand, and his almost always laughing eyes carried that morning a sadness unfamiliar to most. Lucky Roo chewed his meat on deck without speaking, because he knew that when Shanks got like that, silence was more sacred than any pirate toast. Yasopp sharpened his bullets in silence, watching how his captain contemplated the horizon with the same expression he wore when Roger was executed in Logtown. The Mirai Mirai no Mi, the fruit of the future that Roger handed him as a boy, was showing him that morning the images he had been seeing for 10 years straight. He saw a sky over Elbaf split apart, a black scythe falling, a boy in a straw hat dying, and himself arriving too late to save him. Every night for 10 years, the fruit showed him that scene, and every night Shanks awoke in cold sweat, because in the end, he always saw his own death. The fruit could not be turned off, could not be silenced. It was a prison of dreams that he interrupted with sake for barely an hour each night. Beckman finally stepped closer without saying anything, and left another bottle in his hand, because understanding Shanks did not require words between them. 10 years ago, I saw this day, he said it softly, looking at the sake without raising his eyes. And I've done nothing but prepare to arrive on time. Beckman nodded. He did not ask why now. He knew that when Shanks spoke like that, it was because the fruit had already shown him the exact moment to do so. The sky above the ship slowly darkened, as if it knew where the crew was headed, as if the atmosphere of the new world knew the destination. Shanks thought of Luffy, of the boy he had left in East Blue years ago, of the straw hat he had lent and had not yet been returned. He thought of Roger, who had handed him the Mirai Mirai no Mi with the promise that one day he would know what that fruit, full of anticipated tears, was for. His single hand closed over the hilt of Griffin, his sword, and the sword vibrated in response, as if the sleeping Griffin inside knew what was coming. Because Griffin was not just a sword, it was the body chosen by the soul of an ancient Griffin from the Void Century, who had waited 800 years for this. And that day, Shanks knew the sword would ask more of him than it had ever asked before, and he would have to say yes without hesitation. The fruit showed him a brief, painful image. A demon with red horns and white hair holding a black scythe over the wounded body of Luffy. Behind the demon, a living crown of smoke with red eyes watched everything, and Shanks recognized those eyes because he had seen them every night for 10 years. Those eyes belonged to something older than the world government, older than the Tenryubito, older even than the kingdom that dared to face the sun. The fruit showed him his own death, a white blade piercing his chest, a red sky, a feather falling onto a broken straw hat. Shanks set the sake bottle down. For the first time in 10 years, he did not need to interrupt the vision. He had already accepted it. He had already made it his own. Beckman, the first mate, looked at him without blinking. This time, don't follow me. No matter what happens, let none of you set foot on Elbaf. Beckman clenched his jaw. He wanted to say 1,000 things. He said none. He only nodded, because when a captain speaks like that, the first mate doesn't argue. If I don't come back, Shanks smiled tiredly. Drink for me one last time, and find Luffy. Tell him the hat was his from the beginning. The entire crew heard him. No one cried. No one protested. They were red hair pirates. They knew that when Shanks saw a future, that future was already written. The ship reached Elbaf that night. Shanks went down alone, with his sword on his shoulder, with the wind moving his cloak, with the fruit showing him the next few minutes. The giants recognized him. They cleared a path for him without asking. Loki was knocked down. Hydruden was bleeding. The sons of Elbaf had fallen before the power of the immortal demon. Shanks did not stop. He walked toward the crater of the mythical Vegapunk, where he knew his godson was 3 minutes away from being erased from the memory of the world. And as he walked, his left pupil turned gold. His sword, Griffin, began to vibrate, and the sky of Elbaf filled with anticipated red feathers. I'm late again, he said it softly, almost with guilt, looking at the wounded boy at his feet, not taking his eyes off the demon holding the suspended scythe. The scythe of Oblivion trembled in the air, frozen by an invisible force that not even Imu understood, trapped in an instant that refused to continue. Shanks raised his single hand without touching the weapon, and his fingers glowed with a faint golden shimmer, as if they had time coiled between the knuckles. It was Tomare, the power to stop the time of an object, an awakening of the Mirai Mirai no Mi that Roger had handed him as a boy. Imu observed the golden hand with his amber eye narrowed. He recognized the power. He recognized the fruit. He recognized at last the redhead who had been hunting him for 10 years. You! Imu's voice sounded for the first time, deep, cavernous, ancient. The fruit of the future. I knew the first one who bore it. She was beautiful back then. Shanks did not answer. He bent over Luffy. He looked at him with the weary tenderness of a father who arrives just when the sun can no longer rise from the floor. Hang in there, kid, he whispered in his ear, while his fingers touched the boy's forehead and the superficial wound on his cheek began to slowly close. Scythe, the temporal regeneration of minor wounds, the fruit of time returning each scrape to its previous state, undoing each bruise until the skin was intact. But the deep wounds did not close. The fruit did not restore lost limbs. It did not restore broken organs. It did not not restore anything the body had forgotten how to be. That is why Shanks's left arm had never come back. The fruit healed him too late, when that wound was already part of his history, not his present. Luffy opened his eyes. He saw Shanks. He tried to speak. He could barely manage. Shanks smiled at him with a calm only men about to die understand. There are kings who see the future, Shanks whispered in a low, golden voice like a secret passed from father to son. And there are kings who change it. Luffy did not understand, but he nodded because it was Shanks, because it had always been Shanks, because that man was the first king who taught him what freedom meant. Behind them, Imu waved his hand. The Scythe of Oblivion broke free from the Tamara with a cosmic crack, as if time itself had given way. The blade spun in the air and returned to Imu's hand, while the red eyes on the crown all focused on Shanks. You've arrived late to your own futures, Red Hair. Imu smiled for the first time in 800 years, and the distant giants felt chills in their bones. I know. Shanks rose to his feet, slowly, with the sword Griffin resting on his shoulder. But not to this one. To this one, I made it on time. Shanks raised his single hand, and a golden wind surrounded him. The giants, still watching from afar, felt a presence they had not felt since Roger. Shanks's left pupil turned gold. It was Sakidori no Mi, the eye of anticipation, the combat vision that showed him the next 10 seconds. 10 seconds. 10 seconds of advantage over any enemy in the world. 10 seconds where the opponent's movements were an open book before they were written. At 15, he saw 1 second ahead. At 20, 2. At 30, 7. Now, at 39 years old, he saw 10 full seconds. His future self, in meditation visions, saw 30 seconds ahead. But Shanks knew he would never reach that age. That promise would die with him today. Imu wielded the Scythe of Oblivion, and the red eyes of the crown turned. The red tail rose behind him like the stinger of a giant scorpion. The last one, who saw 10 seconds ahead, died in 9. Imu walked slowly toward Shanks, with white hair floating in a wind that did not exist. Shanks did not answer. He raised the sword Griffin. The blade vibrated. A red feather fell from the sky and settled on the edge, burning without being consumed. Loki opened an eye from the ground, bleeding, split in two on the inside, and recognized the redhead from the sky, the only human his father had ever feared. The sky of Elbaf turned red. The red eyes of the crown of smoke multiplied. New eyes sprouted from Imu's aura, all focusing on the redhead. Shanks took a step forward. His golden pupil saw the next 10 seconds. He saw Imu's first move. He saw the second. He saw the third. He saw them all. For 1,000 years no one has seen me coming, Imu whispered with a voice that sounded like an angry ocean. And you've been seeing me for a decade. Then now we're even. Shanks raised the sword. Griffin hummed. The griffin sleeping inside the weapon began to wake, patient, waiting for its moment. And then, with the red sky, with the feathers falling, with the demon's eyes watching, the fight that would forever change the map of the new world began. But before the fight, before the red sky and the demon's eyes, we had to understand where the fruit the redhead carried came from. 30 years ago on the Oro Jackson, Gol D Roger held a strange fruit in his hand, a purple fruit with golden spirals that seemed to blink on their own. Beside him, Rayleigh watched in silence, and at his feet, a 9-year-old red-haired boy looked at the fruit with childlike curiosity, not knowing what it was. Red hair, Roger called him with a tired smile. Come here, I have something important to give you, something I haven't given anyone else in my whole life. Young Shanks came bounding over, as always, with the bright eyes of a kid who didn't yet know how heavy the world of grown men was. Roger crouched down, looked him in the eye, and held out the fruit. The fruit vibrated on its own, as if it knew it was about to choose a new bearer. This fruit is special, Roger spoke quietly, almost in secret. It's called Mirai Mirai no Mi, the fruit of the future, and it's going to make you cry a lot. Young Shanks blinked. Why cry? Roger smiled with that broken smile only kings can have when they know their time is running out. Because you're going to see things, Roger spoke softly, things that haven't happened yet, things you won't be able to change, and that's the worst curse there is. Rayleigh looked away. He knew the price of that fruit. He knew the sleepless nights that awaited the red-haired boy for the rest of his life. Young Shanks hesitated, but he trusted Roger. He trusted him more than anyone else in the world, and so, without hesitating any longer, he took a bite. The taste was horrible. Golden spirals slid down his throat. A light passed through him. His eyes turned white for one complete and terrifying instant, and then he saw it, the first vision. Roger executed in Logtown, his mentor, his hero, bleeding on a wooden platform in front of thousands of people. He saw Roger smiling in the last second. He saw the words he would speak. He saw an adult buggy crying in the crowd without knowing what awaited him. Young Shanks fell to his knees, and he cried. He cried for 3 whole days without stopping. Rayleigh held him in silence. Roger watched him from afar with guilt. When he finally stopped stopped crying, Roger sat down in front of him. He poured him hot tea. He wiped his tears with the sleeve of his own shirt. Young Shanks listened. He was 9 years old. He didn't yet understand the weight of the words Roger was about to speak to him that afternoon. "There are kings who see the future," Roger said, "and there are kings who change it. You're going to learn to be both, but not at the same time. First you'll see, for years, for decades, you'll see terrible things. You'll see people you love die, and you won't be able to change them because it's not your time yet. But one day," Roger looked at him steadily, "one day you'll see something you can change. One day you'll see a boy with a straw hat at sea. And that day," Roger smiled tiredly, "that day you'll know why I gave you this fruit. That day you'll understand that every tear was worth it, my red hair." Young Shanks nodded. He didn't understand, but he nodded, because it was Roger, because it had always been Roger, and because Roger's words burned themselves into the soul. Roger hugged him. It was the last real hug he ever got from him. A few months later, Roger turned himself into the Marines, and Shanks watched him die. And from then on, for 30 years, Shanks saw things. He saw Whitebeard fall, he saw Ace fall, he saw 1,000 futures where he tried to intervene and failed. He saw his own death for the first time at 24 years old. Vaguely, a silhouette with red horns, a black scythe, a split sky over a strange island. He saw the straw hat at sea at 27 years old. He felt it was the moment. He lent it to the right boy. He kept Roger's promise. And since that vision, Shanks knew that one day he would reach Elbaf. That one day he would face the demon. That one day he would return the favor of the hat. And he knew too that from that encounter he would not return to his ship. That final vision, the one of his own death, was the only one that would never change. That is why he trained for years using another secret power of his fruit, Karita Hansha, the borrowed reflection, which let him see his future self in meditation. That is why at 39 he fought as if he were 70. That is why his haki cut like no one else's. That is why he was one of the Yonko. But that night in Elbaf, Shanks was not just a Yonko. He was the borrowed reflection of a future he would never live, fighting against the original demon. And then, on that night in Elbaf, the two men who carried the weight of time measured each other for the first time face to face beneath the red sky. Shanks took the first step. His golden pupil saw the next 10 seconds. He saw the scythe spinning. He saw the red tail striking. He saw the red eyes firing. He dodged the first attack before Imu launched it. The white blade passed inches from his cheek, kicking up red feathers around him. Imu's red tail unfurled like a giant stinger and slammed into the ground where Shanks had been a second before. The Vegapunk crater sank deeper. Imu watched. He was not surprised that Shanks dodged. He was surprised by how he did it, without looking, without thinking, as if the actions had been choreographed in advance. Mirai Doki, Imu whispered the ancient name, the heartbeat of the future. Your body syncs with yourself 10 seconds ahead. Beautiful cursed power. Shanks did not answer. He attacked. The sword Griffin descended in a golden arc, wrapped in flames of Conqueror's haki, singing as if it wanted to bite the demon. The air around the blade cracked like dry bone. It was sovereign haki fused to the edge. Wounds no body, no time, no fruit could ever heal afterward. Imu blocked with the Scythe of Oblivion. The clash generated a golden black wave that split the clouds of Elbaf's sky into two opposing hemispheres. The distant giants dropped to their knees. The combined pressure of the two conquerors' hakis was something the world had not felt since the era of Roger. Shanks pushed, Imu pushed, the two swords vibrated, the white blade sang, the golden blade answered, the red eyes on the crown turned furiously. Shanks broke the clash with a spin. His cloak exploded into red blades, a dozen sharp feathers cutting through the air like living darts hunting for flesh. Hain no Yaiba, the redhead whispered as they flew. The feathers hummed. They smelled of embers. Each one carried a piece of his own death out ahead. Imu swung the scythe in a circle. The black steps of the handle detached from the weapon like living guillotine blades, spinning on their own, cutting every red feather. Ikiru Kaiden, Imu smiled. The living steps. My scythe has more awakened parts than you, red hair. Each one remembers an erased victim. The cut feathers fell to the ground, crumbling. Shanks was already somewhere else, using Mirai Doki to reappear behind Imu before Imu could turn. His sword came down toward the demon's neck. The sovereign haki burned. Imu barely managed to block with the scythe's handle, taking a superficial wound. A wound on Imu's neck, the first wound he had taken in 800 years. A dark mark, ancient, that smelled of old forgotten ocean. Imu touched the dark mark with a finger. He observed it. His amber eye glowed. For the first time in 8 centuries, he felt something resembling respect for a human. This sword, Imu looked at Griffin. I recognize this sword. 800 years ago, a man wielded it against me, and he made me bleed that time too. Shanks did not answer, but his golden pupil vibrated differently. A strange heat rose up his single hand. The sword was pulling him. The sword wanted to show him something. It was Basho no Kyoku, the memory of space. Any object he touched returned its past to him in waves, as if he were touching a wound still bleeding. Without meaning to, looking at the dark mark on Imu's finger, he caught an echo of the void century, a man with the same sword falling on his feet. The vision lasted an instant, but it made something clear to him. He was not the first. The sword Griffin had fought Imu before, and had lost back then. Imu smiled. "That man was a friend of mine," he whispered, "before, when I was still human, when I still remembered my real name, not the one the world gave me." Shanks raised the sword. "And what was your name?" Imu closed his eye. For the first time, something in his face trembled, something human, something buried for 800 years. But the moment passed. Imu opened his eye. The red tail rose. The eyes on the crown focused. The demon became only demon again. "He died 8 centuries ago," Imu said, "and you'll die tonight, Red Hair, just like him, just like everyone who carried that sword before you." Imu wielded the scythe. The sky darkened. The red eyes on the crown released black bolts that fell on Shanks like acid, ancient rain. Every use of the vision, every use of the awakening, every use of Mirai Doki aged him by days. The fruit collected time for each move he executed, but Shanks did not stop. He knew he wouldn't survive that night. He knew every second spent was a second given to Luffy's tomorrow. Imu invoked the Akuma Keshi, his hand extended toward Shanks, a silent command. The Mirai Mirai no Mi had to go dark, as it had with Luffy's fruit, but Shanks's fruit resisted. The awakening gave him partial immunity. Imu frowned. It was the first devil fruit that resisted his nullification. And then Imu smiled, slowly, wickedly, remembering something from the void century, something only he knew, something that would shift the balance of the fight completely. Imu closed his eye, and when he opened it, the sky of Elbaf filled with shadows, humanoid shadows, shadows of kings, shadows of men Shanks had loved, Oja no Kaga, shadows of fallen kings, a technique only Imu could execute, the summoning of the spectral echoes of every king he had seen die. The first shadow formed in front of Shanks. He was tall. He wore a mustache in the shape of a crescent moon. His pupilless eyes glowed with spectral white light. Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, the shadow of the former Yonko, dead in Marineford, wielding a spectral Bacento, looking at Shanks with a hatred he had never carried in life. "It's not him," Shanks whispered, but his heart hurt all the same. The body's memory did not understand ghosts. It only understood loves broken by war. The second shadow formed, taller, golden hair in the wind, a smile Shanks knew better than any other, a cloak that billowed like a flag. Gol D, Roger, his mentor, his adoptive father, the man who handed him the fruit of time, the first king of the pirates, looking at him with hollow eyes. Roger's shadow raised a sword identical to the one Shanks bore. Griffin, a spectral version, fragmented, but just as sharp in the echo's hands. Shanks trembled, not from fear, from pain, Imu noticed. Imu smiled. The red eyes on the crown turned in unison, celebrating the emotional crack discovered. "Have fun, Red Hair." Imu stepped aside. "Fight with your dead kings, fight with your fathers, fight with your loves. Try not to cry." Roger's shadow attacked first. Shanks blocked. The clash rang out. It was exactly Roger's strength. It was exactly his technique. It was exactly his tired smile. Shanks fought with tears in his eyes. Every motion was a goodbye he had never been able to say. Every block was a hug he would never give again. Whitebeard's shadow attacked from behind. Shanks spun. He dodged with Mirai Doki, but his golden pupil began to falter. The fruit was losing clarity. Shanks fell to his knees. For 1 second, only for 1 second, but it was enough. Imu approached. His hand extended toward the redhead's forehead. Kako no Oshitsuke, forced memory, the definitive counterattack. Imu, knower of all pasts, could project a traumatic memory directly into the enemy's mind. He touched Shanks's forehead, and Shanks saw. He saw the day he lost the arm, the day the Lord of the Coast attacked, but this time he saw it as never before. This time he saw it from another perspective. This time he saw it with the truth that had been hidden for 30 years. Shanks screamed. He fell. Imu pulled his hand back. Shanks's golden pupil went dark. The vision of the future was erased for 30 full seconds. "Now you're blind," Imu whispered. "Like any human, without your fruit, without your future. Let's see how much of a king you are when you don't know what's coming." Roger's shadow attacked. Shanks blocked late. His sword vibrated. He took a deep cut to his torso. He fell backward, holding himself up as best he could. Whitebeard's shadow struck him in the back. Shanks fell to the cracked ground, bleeding, with no future, with no vision, only with his will and his sword, Griffin. Imu raised the Scythe of Oblivion. He aimed it at Shanks's chest. He was going to erase him from the world. He was going to finish what he had started with Luffy minutes earlier. But Shanks smiled, with his body spent, with his right eye full of dust, with his fruit gone dark. He smiled like a man who had already accepted everything. There are kings who see the future, he whispered, and there are kings who change it. I choose the second, Imu, even if it costs me every second I have left. And then Shanks did something Imu was not expecting. Something no human had done against him in 800 years. Something only an Akagami could do. He touched the handle of the scythe with his single hand and activated Basho no Kyoku, the memory of space. And he saw the entire past of the weapon. He saw 1,000 erased victims. He saw fallen civilizations. He saw the ancient kingdom destroyed. He saw warriors, kings, children, elders, all forgotten, all pierced by that sentencing scythe. And among all the visions, he saw one, just one, different. A young man with white hair, without horns, without spots, without a tail, laughing with a woman. It was Imu before. It was the human Imu. It was the sage of the ancient kingdom. And the woman embracing him in that vision, Shanks did not know who she was, but he knew something more important. He knew the name, the true name of Imu, the name the demon had buried for 800 years under layers of power. Shanks slowly opened his eyes. Warm bleeding ran down his chin. His single hand gripped the sword, and the air of Elbaf waited with him. He moved his lips. The word rose up from some old place in his chest, a word 1,000 years old, a word that had been 800 years hungry for outside air, and he said it. He let it fall between the two of them, soft, firm, like someone placing a hot key on the palm of the only locksmith left alive on Earth. The red eyes on the demon's crown closed in a slow cascade. 1, 2, 5, 20, 100, and the shadows of the fallen kings vanished in silence. What Shanks saw when he touched the scythe was not just image, it was memory. 800 years ago, the ancient kingdom, before the fall of the world, there was a young sage in that kingdom. Short white hair, dark skin, no horns, no spots, no tail. Only a brilliant human with eyes full of questions. His name was different from Imu's. It was a soft name, old, sweet, a name spoken in the language of the poneglyphs during warm mornings. He was the keeper of the library of the ancient kingdom. He knew every text, every prophecy, every secret of the sea. He was the wisest of his entire generation. They loved each other in silence, as sages love, without grand gestures, only shared books. Tea at sunset, hands that brushed between the parchments. But one day the war came. The 20 kingdoms allied. They attacked the ancient kingdom. The walls fell, the poneglyphs began to break, the sky darkened. The young sage ran to the library. He knew a fruit was hidden there, a forbidden fruit, a fruit no one had dared to touch in 1,000 years. The Akuma no Mi, core of the demon of the sea, the fruit from which all the others were fragments, the one that appeared before whoever wished to rule. The young sage took it in his hands. It was warm. It pulsed like a heart. It called to him in a tongue that even he, the keeper, could not decipher. His woman entered the library, bleeding, wounded. She begged him not to eat it. She begged him to flee with her. She begged him to let the kingdom die. But the young sage could not. He was the keeper. It was his duty. It was the only thing he knew how to do in a world that was crumbling around him. The woman cried, and the young sage kissed her for the last time and whispered in her ear, "I'll come back for you, I promise, just for a moment." And he ate the fruit. The pain was immediate and absolute and eternal, and nothing in his world would ever be the same again afterward. The pain was indescribable. The demon entered his body. It tore him apart from within. He grew horns. He grew a tail. His skin filled with white spots. His hair grew long and white. His eyes sank inward. His heart stopped being human. A crown of smoke grew with red eyes. The woman screamed when she saw him. It was her beloved. But he was no longer himself. He was something more, something older, something crueler, something that looked at her without recognizing her. The demon inside him looked at the woman. He spoke to her in a cavernous voice, and before she could flee, he touched her forehead with 2 fingers, and he erased her from the world. Sanzai Keishi, his first use of the power, his first victim. The entire world forgot the sage's woman before the next dawn. The young sage, already transformed, already consumed, cried for the last time as a human, a tear that fell to the earth and turned to black stone. And from that day on, the demon used the young sage's body. He founded the world government. He erased the void century. He killed the ancient descendants. Imu became Imu. The young sage died that afternoon, even though his body kept walking 800 more years, empty, hollow, driven by the demon of the sea. Only one detail remained, a detail the demon could not erase. The true name of the young sage, buried beneath layers of power, waiting for a day, waiting for someone with a fruit of the future to look at the past of of the weapon, discover the name, and speak it aloud, firm. And then, for an instant, the young sage could return, only for a moment, only long enough to do one thing before dying for good. That was the crack. That was the only way to kill Imu, not by force, not by haki, by the name, by the buried memory. Shanks opened his eyes in the present. The shadows had vanished. The red eyes on the crown were closed. Imu trembled in front of him, paralyzed. Atlas, Shanks spoke the true name of the young sage. Your name was Atlas, and you loved a woman whose name the demon did not let me see. Imu fell to his knees, the amber eye filled with something. Tears? Memory? Sadness? Not even Shanks knew. He only knew the demon had lowered a shield. Atlas, Shanks repeated, rising with effort, with the sword Griffin trembling in his hand. I'm sorry, I didn't make it in time. I couldn't save you. Imu looked at him from the floor. For 1 second, he was Atlas. For 1 second, he was the young sage, the man who had loved 800 years ago. Kill me, Imu whispered with a broken voice. Human, hoarse. Please, kill me before the demon comes back. Kill me before she waits any longer for me. And Shanks knew that was the moment. That was the only instant when he could end it all. But he also knew his strength would not be enough. But the demon did not let Atlas last long. The red eyes on the crown opened one by one, slowly, regaining control of the borrowed body. Imu rose abruptly. The amber eye turned cold again. Atlas's human voice was buried again beneath layers of demonic power. Nice try, Red Hair. Imu smiled with teeth that sharpened themselves. But Atlas died 800 years ago, and no name is going to bring him back whole. The Scythe of Oblivion rose again. The red tail unfurled, the red eyes focused. The demon was standing again, complete, furious. Shanks knew his only chance had passed, but he also knew something else. He knew his sword was ready. He knew Griffin could wait no longer, because Griffin was special. It was not just a sword. It was a sleeping Griffin. It was a mythical Zoan that chose to live in an ancient weapon. 20 years ago, a teenage Shanks had found that sword on a forbidden island in the Calm Belt, an island that appeared on no map in the world. The sword was driven into a rock, as if waiting, as if knowing. When Shanks touched it, the sword vibrated and spoke to him in his mind with an ancient voice. Eat me, the sleeping Griffin inside the sword said. Eat the fruit I have buried in my soul, and together we'll wait for the true king. Teenage Shanks did not understand, but he trusted his instinct, and he pulled from the sword's pommel a small purple fruit shaped like a griffin's feather. It was the Tori Tori no Mi, model sovereign griffin, a unique mythical Zoan fruit, the fruit of the griffin, one of the guardian creatures of the ancient kingdom. When teenage Shanks ate it, he expected to transform into a griffin. He expected wings, he expected claws, he expected a beak, but none of that happened in his young body. Instead, the sword lit up. The griffin had decided. It did not want a human body. It wanted to remain a weapon. It wanted to wait for the true king of the world. And from that day on, Shanks carried the sword, and the sword carried the griffin. And for 20 years, they slowly recognized each other, like a king learning his crown. But the griffin had never called Shanks its king. Not fully. Not with everything that recognition implied in the ancient language of the Void Century. That night, in Elbaf, Shanks knew it was the moment. He raised the sword Griffin toward the sky and spoke to it softly, almost like a final prayer. Griffin, Shanks whispered, I know I'm not your king yet. I know I haven't earned your recognition, but today I'm asking you for a loan of power, old friend. The sword vibrated. The sleeping griffin heard him, and for the first time in 20 years, it answered in Shanks's mind with clear and ancient words. You are not my king yet, the griffin said, but tonight I will lend you my wings and my claws. I will fight with you at your side, Akagami, no Shanks. And the sword erupted. Red feathers shot out. The golden aura intensified, and the sword began to partially fuse with Shanks's body. It was the hybrid form, the Knight of the Griffin, the first transformation of the Tori Tori no Mi, the first time Shanks used it publicly. Red wings grew from his back, feathers burst from his shoulders, his single hand turned into a black claw with golden talons, his eyes glowed gold, the cloak tore from the wings, the red hair lifted with the wind, and Shanks no longer looked like just a man. He looked like an ancient winged knight. Imu stepped back. For the first time in the fight, he stepped back. Something in him recognized the griffin. Something in him remembered the guardian creatures of the kingdom. It's not possible, Imu muttered. The griffins died 800 years ago. I myself saw the last ones fall in the flames of the destroyed palace. Not all of them died. Shanks spoke with a new voice, mixed with a beastly echo within. One hid, one waited, one stood vigil for its true king. Imu wielded the scythe, but it was too late. Shanks leapt. The red wings drove him into the air, a direct ascending charge against the demon of the sea. The black claw and the sword fused to the arm came down in unison. Imu blocked with the scythe. The impact sank the Vegapunk crater 10 meters deeper. Shanks spun in the air. He launched lethal feathers, Heine no Yaiba. But this time it was not 10 feathers, it was hundreds. Red cutting rain falling on the demon. Imu wielded the scythe in a circle. Living steps flew. They cut feathers, but not all of them. Some got through. Some wounded the demon in shoulders and chest. Dark wounds opened. The red eyes spun furiously. The red tail thrashed. And for the first time in 800 years, Imu felt real fear, because that redhead was not just any human. That redhead carried the Griffin, and the Griffins were the only creatures the demon of the sea truly feared. There was a moment, just an instant, when the fight stopped without either having ordered the halt. When the air of Elbaf hung suspended between them, Shanks was in the air, held up by the red wings of the Griffin, panting, with the golden claw ready for another strike. His left pupil was slowly glowing again. Imu was on the ground, with white spots stained dark, with the scythe resting on the earth. The red eyes on the crown blinked, exhausted. Shanks landed, his wings folded halfway. He walked slowly toward the demon. The sword Griffin dragged its golden edge along the cracked floor of the Vegapunk. He sat down 3 meters from Imu, not as an enemy, as two ancient warriors sharing a sacred moment before the final exchange that would decide everything. He pulled a small bottle of sake from his belt. He uncorked it. He took a drink. He offered the bottle to the demon. Imu looked at it. He hesitated and accepted it at last. The demon drank. He swallowed. The dark wounds on his body remained marked, deep, but for a moment, while he drank, his face seemed human again. "Who were you before?" Shanks spoke softly. "Before the demon, before the fruit. Who was Atlas? What did he dream of? What would he have liked to be if everything had been different?" Imu closed his amber eye. His white hair moved with a wind that did not exist. When he spoke, his voice held something Shanks had not heard before. "He was a sage," Imu whispered. "He liked books. He liked the rain. He liked jasmine tea. And he liked a woman whose name I have forgotten. I also see things I forget," Shanks said. "Futures I could have lived. Women I could have loved. Children I could have had in other lives. My fruit shows them to me," Shanks continued. "The lives I didn't live. I carry in my head false memories of people who never existed in this real world." Imu looked at him, and for an instant Atlas emerged again from behind the demon. His eyes welled up. His red tail relaxed. The spots lightened. "Her name was," Atlas whispered. "Her name was," but the name did not come out. The demon held it back, like a key beneath the ocean of Oblivion for 8 centuries. Shanks nodded. He did not insist. Some names were buried too deep to return to the surface. Some loves died twice, one in body, another in memory. "Atlas," Shanks spoke with respect, "I'm going to have to kill you tonight. It's the only way to free her. It's the only way to free you. Do you understand?" Atlas nodded, slowly, with a hollow look, with a tired look, with the look of a man who had spent 800 years waiting for someone to come and end it all. "Please," Atlas whispered, "make it quick. Do it with your best blow. Let nothing remain of the demon when you're done. Let her wait for me, wherever she is." Shanks nodded. He stood up. The red wings unfolded. The sleeping Griffin awoke again in his arm. The left pupil turned gold once more. Atlas stood up too, but as he rose to his feet, the demon regained control. The red eyes on the crown reopened one by one. The human voice was buried. The face hardened. The white spots darkened. The red tail rose like a stinger. And the demon, complete, looked at Shanks. "Nice moment, Red Hair." Imu smiled with sharp teeth. "But Atlas doesn't decide here. I decide, and I don't want to die. And I'm not going to die today." Imu unleashed something new, something Shanks had not seen coming, something his golden pupil did not detect until it was too late. Yochi Keishi, the cancellation. Shanks's fruit of time went blank. The vision did not process the demon's movement. For the first time in the fight, Shanks would fight completely blind. It was Imu's definitive counter, the move without a past, the move not even the demon knew he was going to make until seconds before making it. The scythe descended. Shanks blocked late, a deep cut to his claw arm. The feathers stained, the fruit could not warn him in time. "Goodbye to the future, Red Hair." Imu smiled. "Welcome to pure present. Let's see how you fight when you don't know what's going to happen in a second." And then he attacked, and he attacked, and he attacked. And Shanks blocked late, dodged late, took cuts that his fruit could not show him in time to evade. The redhead's wounds piled up one after another. The sky of Elbaf darkened. The distant giants understood that the Yonko was losing the battle. And then Shanks knew. He knew he had only one option left. The last option. The option he had never used against anyone in his entire pirate life. He had to see further. Not 10 seconds, not 15. He had to see the whole tree. He had to see every possible future that still remained. Shanks fell to the ground. The griffin claw barely held him up. His wings folded. The golden pupil went out and lit up again several times in a row. Imu approached slowly, the scythe of Oblivion on his shoulder, the red tail swaying like a patient serpent, the eyes on the crown glowing with triumphant red light. "It's over," Imu whispered. "There are no more futures that save you, Red Hair. Your fruit finds no escape. I'm going to erase you from the memory of the entire world." But Shanks smiled, with his body spent, with his wings folding, with his wounded arm, with his body nearly defeated over the shattered crater of the Vegapunk. "You're right," Shanks whispered. "There are no futures that save me. But there is one future, one single future, where Luffy lives, and that one's enough for me." And then Shanks did something he had not done in 20 years, something he had only done once in his life, something that would cost him decades of existence. He activated the Mirai no Mi at its maximum scale, not 10 seconds, not 15, the entire tree, every branch, every possible future that still remained. His human brain was not designed to process that. His nose bled, his ears bled, his left pupil turned gold with silver lines inside. He saw 3,847 futures, each one a branch, each branch a decision, each decision a different world being born in that very instant. In 3,846 futures, Luffy died that night. Imu erased him. The world forgot him. The Straw Hats sailed on without knowing why. In those futures, Shanks tried to save him in different ways. He attacked. He dodged. He activated the full form of the Griffin. He used the 0 point. He called Beckman. And in each of those 3,846 futures, Luffy died. Always, without exception. The story of the Straw Hat ended there. But there was one future, only one, where Luffy lived, where the Straw Hat still belonged to the boy, where the dream of the king of the pirates continued. Shanks died standing. Shanks died smiling. Shanks died making one last attack Imu was not expecting. Shanks died giving the boy time to escape. And in that single future, Imu was left wounded, not dead, not erased, wounded, alive but broken. And he retreated to the bottom of the world to rebuild his power. Luffy awoke. He found the stone sword. He found a red feather. And the journey continued. The story continued. The dream of the king of the pirates went on. Shanks saw that future for a whole second. He saw it clearly. He saw it completely. He saw it all the way to the end. And he knew it was the only one. It was the right one. He chose to die. He decided it firmly, without trembling, without asking for advice, without turning back. Shanks chose to die rather than let the Straw Hat Boy die that night. He did not react. He chose, actively, consciously, without hesitating, without negotiating, without asking for another future from his fruit. He chose the only path where the Straw Hat survived. His gaze changed. His eyes stopped being tired. They became calm. Calm as the sea at dawn. Calm as the last toast of a captain. "You're still the right one, kid," Shanks whispered. "You're still the boy I saw at sea decades ago. You're still the true king, and I believe in you." He looked at Imu again. The left pupil stopped being gold. He no longer needed to see the future. He had already chosen it. He already knew what was going to happen. "Atlas," he spoke for the last time to the man living inside the demon. "If this serves to free you, even for an instant, let it serve. God bless you." Imu halted his attack. Something in him recognized the change. Something understood that the redhead had crossed a threshold. Something remembered an old friend. The sword Griffin vibrated in Shanks's hand. The sleeping Griffin awoke for the first time in 20 years. It spoke to him with an old and solemn voice. "Now," the Griffin said, "now you are my king. Now you are the king I waited for during 800 years. Now I can give you everything, but the cost is final." Shanks smiled. "Take it all, old friend," he whispered. "Take it all. Tonight I'm going with you, but before that, we're going to do one last thing together. The greatest." The Griffin roared in his mind. It accepted. The sword transformed. The partial fusion broke. The Griffin came fully out of the weapon, bursting forth like a red flame. And then it happened. The transformation no one had seen in 800 years. The full form of the sovereign Griffin, a colossal Griffin, 30 meters tall, emerged from the air. Body of a bright red lion, immense wings of scarlet feathers, head of a golden eagle, yellow eyes like angry suns, a red mane flaming around the neck. The Griffin roared. The sky of Elbaf split in two. The clouds parted like old curtains. The distant giants fell to their knees in perfect unison. Shanks jumped up. He mounted the neck of the Griffin. The sword became a smaller version in his hand connected to the body. "Let's go," Shanks whispered. "Let's go, friend. One last time together, and then rest. You've waited long enough. You've kept your promise. You're free, old Griffin." The Griffin spread its wings, and it flew. For the first time in 800 years, a true Griffin flew in the sky of the New World, ridden by a recognized king. Imu looked up. His amber eye opened wide. For the first time in 800 years, his voice trembled. Not from hatred, from a forgotten fear. "No," Imu whispered, that form should not exist. I killed every Griffin 800 years ago. Not one is left. Not one is alive." "One," Shanks answered from above. "One hid, one waited, one stood vigil. And today, that one has returned. And today, that one has a true king." And the Griffin, ridden by Shanks, dove toward the demon. The claws of the empty sky extended, the crowned roar emerging, the sky of Elbaf burning red. The Griffin dove toward Imu. The scarlet feathers cut through the air, leaving golden trails. The huge claws extended, the beak open, the roar being born. Imu wielded the Scythe of Oblivion upward to block, but the Griffin was too big, too ancient, too full of fury accumulated over 8 centuries. The claws of the empty sky struck the scythe. The white blade splintered. For the first time in 800 years, the demon's weapon took real damage. Imu was hurled through the air. His body flew 50 meters. He fell through 3 Vegapunk ruins. The red tail tore. The impact left him wounded. The Griffin landed in the crater. Shanks leapt down. The sword connected to the Griffin's body glowed with a golden aura amplified by the full transformation. Imu got up, bleeding, staggering. For the first time in his existence, he felt real physical exhaustion. The Akuma no Mi had a body that hurt that night. "This body," Imu cried out for the first time with a broken voice. "This body is not mine. Atlas was right, and that's why it hurts. That's why everything hurts, Red Hair. You're not losing to a human." Shanks spoke with a golden voice. "You're losing to a Griffin. You're losing to what you never stopped fearing, Atlas," Imu roared. He activated his full form. His body distorted. The white spots turned black. The red horns grew. The skin became living smoke. Akuma Henge, the full form of the demon. A colossal beast without fixed form. Half human, half shadow, half memory. The form with which he killed the ancient kingdom. The demon's form grew until it matched the Griffin, 30 meters tall. A twisted beast of shadow. 100 red eyes on its body. Horns bending backward. The red tail multiplied into 7 tails with arrow-shaped tips. The hands became elongated claws. The scythe grew proportionally. The white blade repaired itself. "Let's see who loses, Red Hair." The demon's voice thundered in the sky. "Let's see if your Griffin can withstand the core of every fruit in the entire world." Lightning fell, hurricane winds, red rain from the feathers, and the Griffin took off toward the giant demon. The claws of the empty sky stretched out again. The clash was cosmic. The giants heard it from 10 kilometers away. The sky split. The clouds spun. The sea of Elbaf rose 3 full meters. The Griffin charged the demon. The claws sank deep. The demon crushed the Griffin with his hands. The red feathers exploded through the air. Shanks launched lethal feathers from the Griffin's back. The feathers struck the red eyes of the demon. 5 eyes closed. The demon roared for the first time, but then the demon counterattacked. The giant scythe descended. The Griffin tried to dodge. The white blade caught the right wing. The feathers tore. The Griffin fell. Shanks rolled off its back. He landed on his feet on the crater floor, bleeding, with his body almost at its limit, with the fruit consuming years. "Griffin," Shanks spoke softly. "It's time. The last transformation. Let's do it. Let's fuse. The final form. Just for one strike. Just to erase the demon of the sea." The Griffin accepted. It closed its yellow eyes, and it began to dematerialize, to become light, to become feathers, to flow into Shanks's body slowly. The fusion began. The right half of Shanks's body began to transform. The skin turned gold. Feathers were integrated into the burning skin. The right arm, the only one he had, fused with the sword. The sword became part of him. Arm and weapon were one golden thing. Half of his torso glowed like the sun. Golden claws, integrated feathers, a golden eye on his face. The other half remained human, half king, half beast. It was the final form. The Golden King, the last fusion of the Griffin with its true king, a technique used only once in a lifetime. Imu, in his full form, looked at the Golden King. Something in his demonic form wavered. Something remembered the old legends, the true kings of the Void Century. "No," the demon whispered. "It's not fair. I buried this form 800 years ago. ago. I myself watched the last Golden King die. You can't be him." "I'm not him," Shanks answered with a dual voice, human and beastly mixed. "I'm his successor, and I came to finish what he began in the ancient palace." The Golden King leapt. He flew with a single beat of the half-wings he had. He covered the distance in a blink. The arm sword glowed like a new star. Imu wielded the giant scythe. He blocked, but the golden force pushed him back. The scythe splintered further. The demon's red eyes closed in a rapid cascade. 10 eyes closed, 20, 30. Each one represented a fragment of absorbed power lost. Each one was an era the demon was ceasing to remember forever. The Golden King struck with the arm sword in the demon's chest. The golden blade connected deep. The impact was tremendous. The full form contracted. Imu fell. His full form unraveled. He returned to his humanoid form, bleeding from 1,000 wounds, with the scythe dragging beside him, with the red eyes closing. And then Shanks used 0 point. Mu, no 10. His final technique with the Fruit of Time, the one he had never used against a living being. He did not use it on Imu. He used it on the crown of smoke with red eyes, the source of the demon's power, the core that sustained everything. His golden hand touched the aura of smoke, and the aura began to collapse in time, to take itself to 0, to stop having existed. The red eyes all closed. The crown of smoke vanished. Imu fell to the ground, without aura, without crown, without demon inside, for the first time completely alone. And for an instant, Atlas returned. The young sage in the old body looked at Shanks with eyes full of tears and whispered the name of his woman. The Golden King slowly unraveled. The integrated feathers came off one by one. The golden skin became human again. The arm sword separated. The sword Griffin fell to the ground, but it was no longer a sword. It was a statue. The Griffin had kept its promise. Its soul had returned to its original form. The statue was shaped like a griffin crouched over the sword, like a stone guardian, waiting for the next king who would find it in some distant century. Shanks fell to his knees beside the statue. He was no longer the Yonko. He was an old man, a very old man. The fruit had collected everything from him. His red hair had turned gray in patches. Wrinkles had grown on his face. His hands trembled. The Fruit of Time had aged him by decades. He had the appearance of a 90-year-old man. Inside, his organs were all failing at the same time. The bill for 0 point plus the fusion all collected. Atlas, far off, rose staggering. The demon had not returned. For the first time in 800 years, he was only Atlas, an old sage, a forgotten human. He walked toward Shanks, slowly, leaning on the shattered scythe. He reached the place where the redhead knelt and sat down beside him in silence. "You freed me," Atlas whispered. "For a moment, the demon will return, but right now, I am myself, and I thank you with whatever soul I have left inside." Shanks smiled tiredly. "Go to her," he whispered, "wherever she is waiting for you. Tell her you took 800 years because you got lost on the way through the sea." Atlas nodded. He closed his eyes and let his head fall and died in peace at last. After 8 centuries waiting for this instant of final human stillness, Atlas's body disintegrated. The demon of the sea, without a host, without a crown, without a core, escaped like black smoke into the ocean from which it came of old, and the world cleared. The sky of Elbaf turned blue again. The red feathers stopped falling. The distant giants opened their eyes at last. Luffy awoke slowly. His Gomu Gomu no Mi was working again. Imu's nullification had broken with the death of Atlas. He was alive. He was whole. He sat up. He looked at the crater of the Vegapunk. He saw the statue of the Griffin. He saw an old man kneeling beside it, and he knew. Even if it cost him to accept it, he knew. He ran, staggering, with his body wounded, with the straw hat still split beside him. He ran to where Shanks lay dying, and he knelt down. "Shanks," Luffy murmured with a broken voice. "Shanks, no. Shanks, get up. Shanks, don't leave me. We have to meet again at the final sea. We promised years ago." Shanks opened one eye, just one. The other no longer answered. He looked at Luffy and smiled with that tired smile only adoptive fathers know how to make. "Kid," Shanks whispered, "you made it. I knew you would. I saw it 10 years ago. I watched you grow up. I watched you become what you were meant to be." "Dear boy," Luffy cried, as he had never cried. Harder than when Ace died, harder than when Sabo disappeared, harder than when he lost so many. Shanks raised a trembling hand. He touched his cheek. He wiped away a tear, the way Roger used to do with him so many decades ago, like a father, like a brother. "The hat," Shanks whispered. "Pass it to me, kid, just for a moment. Like Roger said, just for a moment. Let me hold it again before I go." Luffy took the split hat. the two halves. He placed them in Shanks's hand. Shanks looked at them. He joined them, he held them, and he saw Roger. He saw Roger handing him the hat. He saw the day he decided to pass it on to Luffy. He saw every step of the road. He saw that it had all been worth it. A red feather fell from the sky, the last feather. It settled gently on the broken hat in Shanks's wrinkled hand. It glowed like a sleeping ember. "I'm giving it back to you, kid." Shanks held the hat out to Luffy. "It was yours from the beginning. I only lent it to you so you'd take care of it until today." Luffy took the hat. He placed it on his head. The red feather rested on the brim, like a discreet crown, like a promise, like a new legacy. "There are kings who see the future," Shanks whispered for the last time, "and there are kings who change it. You're the second kind, kid. I was only the first." "That's not true." Luffy shook his head. "You changed it today. You saved my future. You changed everyone's. You're more of a king than any other man." Shanks smiled, the most tired and happiest smile Luffy had ever seen on him, and he whispered 3 final words that only Luffy heard that night. "I love you, kid." He said it quietly, and then he closed his eye, but he did not fall. His body tilted backward. He leaned against the statue of the Griffin. Luffy cried, and the distant giants heard him. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the sons of Elbaf wept for a human who was not one of their own. Loki, wounded, dragged himself to where Luffy was. He sat down beside him. He said nothing. He just placed an enormous hand on the boy's shoulder. The statue of the Griffin glowed with faint light, as if waiting, as if knowing that one day another true king would arrive at Elbaf to take it up and continue the story. 3 days later, on the sunny, Luffy awoke in his bed, with the hat on the table, with the red feather resting beside the gleaming hat. And above, in the sky of Elbaf, the smoke of the demon was trapped at the bottom of the ocean, waiting patiently for some fool to find it again. There are kings who see the future, and there are kings who change it. There was one who did both. His name was Akagami no Shanks, and beneath the hat, now crowned with the red feather, Luffy learned that night that changing the future was not seeing further, but choosing to die a little.